Good day everyone and welcome to this session on Science, Technology, and Society, or otherwise known as NGEC 7. So I will be your lecturer for this day, and our lesson for today will serve as a summary of chapters 1 and 2 of our reference book. So here we start with chapter 1, okay, which refers to events in history that are related to science and technology. Okay, and these are, we have scientific revolution, the cradles of early science, and lastly, science and technology in the Philippines. Now, as you can see on the progression of the topics, okay, we will take a look at the history of science and technology first on a global perspective. That is why there is this scientific revolution and cradles of early science. And then we will try to zoom in to the national perspective, which is the science and technology in the Philippines. It is important to establish that these three topics have to stand on its own, meaning we look at scientific revolution, cradles of early science, and science and technology in the Philippines individually. Okay? What happened to science and technology and society during the scientific revolution? Next, what happened to science, technology, and society in various continents and countries of the world? And then, what happened to science and technology and society in the Philippines? Okay? By looking at these histories individually, we will see how the humble beginnings, as well as the not so humble beginnings of science and technology took root. Okay? Now, before we dive into these topics, these three topics, okay, let us first define what science, technology, and society is. Okay. Now, we have here a definition of science, which is a methodical way of gaining knowledge on a particular subject through observation and experiments. Now, as we progress on this particular topic, okay, we will see why science is called methodical. There are actually steps to be followed, and those steps needs to be followed for us to gain this particular knowledge through the use of observation and experiments. Now next, technology. What is technology? Technology is the practical application of the scientific knowledge for various purposes. Okay? And lastly, society, which is a group of people with common territory, interaction, and culture. So in a sense, we could say that the goal of science is to acquire knowledge. Okay? While the goal of technology is to create products implementing scientific principles to benefit society. Now, as you can see in this particular summary, okay, we have highlighted the period here because as we progress through the topics, okay, this period will actually become a question mark. Bakit magiging tanong? Okay? Mapapatanong tayo, does it really benefit society? So we will go to that as the topics progress. Now, we may compare science and technology to a jigsaw puzzle. Okay? In a jigsaw puzzle, we begin with a blank piece of canvas. Blanco. And then as time passes by, puzzle pieces are added to the canvas. Okay? Later, we discover that a combination of these puzzle pieces enables us to create specific pictures. Okay? Now, the blank piece of canvas represents the body of knowledge. Okay? Which, when we go back to time immemorial, we can say that early civilizations, early societies of the world began with nothing, no knowledge. And then as time passes by, we were able to add little by little to this body of knowledge, much like a jigsaw puzzle. Okay? So each puzzle piece, okay, this one, represents the scientific discoveries, scientific theories, scientific principles, and scientific laws. Okay? And out from a combination of this gathered knowledge, okay, we were able to invent technologies to fulfill a need of the society. For example, a plane, a light bulb, or a cell phone. Okay? Thus, we may say that science is to knowledge, while technology is to inventions. And inventions are geared towards simplifying the lives of people and fulfilling a need of society. Now again, it is important to stress here, class, that as we go along our topics, we will come to a point that we will question whether science and technology really benefit society. Does it really benefit society? Or is it disadvantageous to society? Okay? An example of this is on the issue of global warming and climate change brought about by consumerism, okay? Or the idea of people to consume, okay? As a result of the advances in science and technology. For now, let us focus our attention on the benefits that science and technology brings to society. So an example of technology is Tesla's self-driving electric vehicles. Now, to be able to create this technology, the resulting car must be able to keep on its proper lane when driving, must be able to monitor blind spots, and it must be able to detect and avoid collisions. Okay? Now, this can only be done using the scientific knowledge on sensors. Okay? For example, radar, ultrasonic sensors, and cameras. Okay? Next, the car must be able to have access to the latest traffic conditions, weather adjacent cars, and road infrastructure to anticipate braking or avoid hazardous conditions. Thus, the car implements the scientific knowledge on connectivity, as it enables communication of these data used to monitor a car's surrounding operating environment. So lastly, the car must be able to make decisions on steering, braking, control of its speed, and route guidance, okay? All of which is governed by the complex algorithms, okay? Software and control algorithms, which combines the data gathered by the sensors. Now, combining the scientific knowledge, we will be able to create this particular technology. Now, for the society, this means reduced greenhouse gas emissions, okay? That is deemed to mitigate global warming and consequently climate change. Okay? This is also more economical in the long run, as this will not be relying on fossil fuels such as petroleum that are susceptible to price hikes. Okay? And lastly, its self-driving capability, which brings inclusion as it enables the aged, okay, yung mga matatanda, and the differently abled individuals. Now here we see technology as a practical application of scientific knowledge on sensors, connectivity, and control algorithms, which are supported due to its benefits to society. With this in mind, let us now backtrack on past events. So here we see some of the prominent scientists which emerged during a time period known as the Scientific Revolution. Okay? Now, much like the EDSA People Power Revolution, where Filipinos called for a change of government, okay? During this time period, we see people like Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Charles Darwin finding their voice to speak up their own truth about their observations and experiments despite the negative impressions of many people, particularly those who follow traditions, people in authority, and the church. Okay? Claims such as the sun is at the center of the universe and not the earth, that man may have evolved over time, okay? That only a part of the air is responsible to producing combustion, which was later found out to be oxygen, that the circulation of blood within the human body is continuous. The list goes on and on. These discoveries, its hallmark, okay, the hallmark of these claims are its position to challenge the traditions handed down from generation to generation, especially those coming from authority figures such as Ptolemy, and its defiance to some of the church's teachings. Thus, these claims are labeled heretic, and thus the term revolution in scientific revolution. Now moving forward. So there was this famous quote attributed to Sir Isaac Newton, and I quote, "If I have seen farther than the others, it is because I was standing on the shoulders of giants." Now, one interpretation of this quote is that science builds upon what has already been discovered, which gives importance to past discoveries and inventions. As such, aside from the time period we challenge existing traditions, we come now to unravel how ancient civilizations and early societies all over the world was able to maintain their own set of knowledge and tools to not only survive but also thrive as a society. So we now explore the cradles of early science. Cradle means duyan in Filipino. Okay? So here we see science or the body of knowledge as a baby and how it was nurtured by specific civilizations and places. So we have here Mesoamerica, Asia, Middle East, and Africa. Okay? So in Mesoamerica, it is associated with three known ancient civilizations, namely the Maya, the Inca, and the Aztec. If you have watched Apocalypto, okay, the movie, it actually depicts the life of the Mayan civilization. So each of these societies have their respective body of knowledge. Okay, Mayans were known for their works in astronomy. For example, their ability to predict eclipses, their ability to create a loom for them to be able to weave cloth, and a writing system known as hieroglyphics. So Incans are known for building roads, irrigation system, their suspension bridge, okay, and their unique way of records keeping or inventory, okay. While the Aztecs were known for their agricultural farming, known as chinampa, its mandatory education and development of canoe. In Asia, we consider two locations or countries, namely India and China. Okay, both are famous for their discoveries in traditional medicines, for example, Ayurveda and acupuncture, respectively. Okay? Now, one notable difference is India's capability to manufacture iron and its skill in metallurgy, okay, whilst China is known for its technologies, for example, compass, gunpowder, printing tools. Okay? Now, in the Middle East countries are actually attributed to the discovery of optics, algebra, chemistry, and medicine. Lastly, for Africa, specifically in Egypt, they are known for their works in alchemy, which is the medieval forerunner or the predecessor of chemistry. Now, if we go back during this time, there was no scientific method. Okay, Mayans do not know that they need to observe, they need to gather evidences, that they need to make a hypothesis, that they have to make conclusions. Okay, there was no internet, there was no communication between civilizations. But somehow, the society was able to pass on their very own body of knowledge and their very own set of tools, their own science and technology. Now, here are some pictures of their discoveries and inventions. Okay, so we have the Mayan calendar, the Incan suspension bridge. So this is actually the last Incan suspension bridge. Okay, the Aztecs agricultural way of farming known as chinampa, the Indians Ayurveda, okay, which is basically utilizing herbs, okay, and then Chinese acupuncture, and the Middle East algebra. Now, having been presented with science and technology of the various continents and countries of the world, we may now ask, what about the Philippines? Do our ancestors have their own body of knowledge and tools? If so, what are these, and how did it help them thrive? So to begin our discussion, let us first study the indigenous science and technology in the Philippines. So indigenous people in the Philippines include the Ati, Bajau, Igorot, Ilonggots, Lumad, Mangyan, Negritos of Luzon, Palawan tribes, and Tumandok. So here it is important to stress that indigenous science uses community, culture, and values. Okay? And then it is guided by science, process, skills, and it is composed of traditional knowledge. So for us to be able to utilize this particular diagram, okay? So an example of this is their traditional knowledge of predicting the weather, okay? So this is guided by their observation that if during a new year, a cow or horse eat grass and wail afterwards, okay, it shall mean drought, magkakaroon ng El Nino or drought. So their community culture involves using animals to help them till the land. It uses science process skills of observation, gathering data, and making a conclusion that if these particular animals act this way, then this is the particular effect or the conclusion, which is then handed down from generation to generation as traditional knowledge. Other indigenous science include prediction of weather. When goats repeatedly wail, it means a landslide. Okay? In medicine, we have what we call the herbolarios, okay, or arbolario, and the traditional way of healing, okay, yung tuob. Then agriculture, the Banawe rice terraces made by the Ifugaos. Then technology, their way of pottery. Okay, so after some time, development of science and technology happened. Okay, indigenous science changed and was influenced by internal and external influences. Okay, so internal influences are the ones we have discussed previously. The early Filipinos' indigenous science. Now, when the Spanish colonizers came, they also brought with them their own traditions and cultures, their own science and technology. They established a formal science and technology education system. Now, in addition, when the Americans came, okay, they tried to Americanize the Filipinos. Okay? So public education was made available and even helped establish a modern research university, the University of the Philippines. Okay? So UP is actually goes back to the American colonization era. So also, since a growing demand for science and technology professionals, for example, the scientists, engineers, doctors, technology experts, are needed worldwide, the country must keep up in improving its human resources. Kaya goes the song, napakaraming inhinyero sa amin, ngunit bakit tila walang natira? So other versions of that will be the nurses. Okay, napakaraming nurse dito sa amin, pero bakit walang natira? Okay, nag-a-abroad sila. So although this is seen as a negative effect known as brain drain, where our talented Filipino human resource is used by other foreign countries, this gave the Philippines an exposure to better science and technology and paved way for our science and technology to improve significantly. Okay? So negative effect na yung mga Pilipino is pupunta ng ibang bansa para magtrabaho. Okay? And their talents are used by the foreigners. But in a way, okay, yung balik noon is that somehow, okay, since foreign countries were able to see that Filipinos are good at what they are doing, especially for science and technology related jobs, then it actually translates to better science and technology in our country. Now, moving forward, various policies, programs, and projects, okay, by the Philippine government has been geared towards the development of science and technology. Okay, these 3 Ps, again, the policies, programs, and projects, are anchored on the country's national goals, okay, international treaties, legal frameworks, and the social needs, issues, and problems, okay, that are faced by the country. Okay, these are the basis for these particular policies, programs, and projects. One notable action is the creation of the Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, mandated to provide central direction, leadership, and coordination of scientific and technological efforts and ensure that the results therefrom are geared and utilized in areas of maximum economic and social benefits for the people. So we see here that DOST is geared towards the social benefits of the people. Okay? So part of these efforts are the creation of science schools in various parts of the country. These include the Special Science Elementary Schools, the Philippine Science High School System, okay, Quezon City Regional Science High School, and Manila Science High School, among others. So there are other schools. Okay, so as we can see here, we have focus on elementary, we also have for the high school, and also we have for the tertiary education. So previously we have stated that UP is one of the centers of research in the Philippines, which was established during the American colonization era. Now here it goes without saying that these schools are geared towards the development of a scientifically cultured and literate citizenry. Now, let us look at a diagram presenting the factors that influence the development of Filipino scientists for us to connect this to the government's efforts. Okay? So these are the factors. Here we see that Filipino scientists are products of good school science. They have been taught and inspired by great teachers. Their interest in science may have grown from their childhood years with the support of their family. Their natural environment ignited their curiosity to learn more about the natural and physical environment. Schools and laboratories where they studied and worked nurtured this. So their scientific laboratories have real-life context. Their activities are actually connected to real-life scenarios. Okay? So throughout our education, we always hear about scientists such as Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, and Galileo Galilei. Less has been known about our very own Filipino scientists. Okay? So has the country been successful in its efforts of developing Filipino scientists? So if so, what are their contributions to the body of knowledge? Now let us look at 3 of our notable Filipino scientists. So mango season starts in the month of March and ends in June in the Philippines. So from March up to June. Thanks to the discovery of scientist Ramon Cabanos Barba, that sweet, soft, and juicy yellow fruit will now be available all year round, as he invented a way to induce flowering in mango trees regardless of season. Okay, the next scientist, okay, for far-flung areas. Far-flung areas may not have their own source of electricity, or they may have available electrical supply but are incapable of paying the electricity bill. Well, scientist Isa Miheno says, bid goodbye to dark nights, as she invents what is called sustainable alternative lighting, okay, abbreviated as SALT. A light-emitting diode or LED lamp that runs on water and 2 tablespoons of salt or seawater. Okay? So this is Isa Miheno holding the SALT device or the sustainable alternative lighting system. Now, for our next scientist, okay, Newton's law of gravity says that there is a force of attraction between 2 massive objects. So that is the law, okay, that is true every time we check, okay, that is why it is called a law, Newton's law of gravity. But it doesn't explain why there is this force of attraction. Now, Einstein's theory of gravity explains how and why objects attract. Since it is a theory, it might be wrong, okay? So Reina Reyes was dubbed as the Filipina scientist who proved Einstein right by testing Einstein's theory on a large scale or cosmological scale, which involves the distances between galaxies. Through her analysis of 70,000 galaxies, using Sloan Digital Sky Survey, and comparing it with the predictions using Einstein's theory, there is significant evidence to show that Einstein's theory holds within a given margin of error. Now this is Reina Reyes. So, and there you have it. So we have discussed some of the historical events in science, technology, and society in the time period of the scientific revolution. Okay, so we also discussed the various places in the world and the early societies and civilizations with their very own science and technology. So we discussed Mesoamerica, about the Mayans, the Incans, and the Aztecs, okay? About the Middle East countries, Africa, and also the Southeast Asian nations, India and China. Okay, so they have their very own science and technology. Okay. And lastly, we discuss how our indigenous Filipino ancestors thrive using their own body of knowledge and tools. how colonization, so the coming of the Spaniards and the Americans, as well as the foreign trade, has influenced the development of science and technology in our country, and how our country developed projects, programs, and policies, the 3Ps, geared towards development of science and technology in the country, and also the factors that influence the development of Filipino scientists. We also talked about the Filipino scientists which have actually contributed to the body of knowledge which is now available to the whole world. So this ends our discussion for Chapter 1, and I'll see you on our discussion for Chapter 2, Human Condition and its Relation to Science, Technology, and Society. So if you found this video helpful, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel if you are not yet subscribed, and ring the notification bell so that you will be updated on our latest uploads. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.